Monks and Nuns of the Last Dharma Age, the doctrinal base for Amidaji ordinations. Both Honen Shonen and Shinran Shonen were ordained Tendai monks. Although they left that school, they continued to wear their monk robes, and while Honen remained celibate, Shinran got married and had 6 children. Before him and after him, many monks had secret wives and children, but Shinran went public about his marriage and continued to wear the monk's robes. Also, after he and Master Honen were banished by the emperor, stripped of their ordination status, and given secular names, they also kept their robes. At that time, Shinran said about himself that he was neither monk nor lay, but he continued to wear the robes of a monk. Later, they were both pardoned, so their former status was restored. Why did Shinran marry? Because he wanted to show that salvation offered by Amida Buddha does not make any discrimination between those who keep the precept of celibacy and those who are attached to their wives and children, or have various other blind passions. Why did he say that he was neither a monk nor lay? There are 2 reasons for this. Firstly, although the emperor stripped him of his monkhood and Shinran was given a secular name, he did not consider himself to be a lay person living a worldly life without any religious aspirations. Secondly, although he was pardoned and his status restored, he was still not able to live the life of a monk belonging to the right Dharma age. While at the same time, he had more aspirations than an ordinary lay person. Later, all his ordained disciples followed his example and got married. Even now, the clergy of Jodo Shinshu, both men and women, get married and have children like the rest of Japanese Buddhist monks of other schools. So, it is important to realize that Shinran did not deny his monk ordination by saying that he is neither monk nor lay, but only his spiritual capacities to be like the monks of the right Dharma age when Shakyamuni and his direct disciples were in the world. By saying neither monk nor lay, he actually meant neither a virtuous monk of the right Dharma age nor a lay. Thus, there is no problem if we, his ordained disciples of modern times, call ourselves monks and nuns, as long as we keep in mind that we are not the virtuous monks of that long-gone era, but the decadent monks of this last Dharma age. Although Shinran was public about his marriage, which was approved by his master, and he knew that Amida saves everybody, either monk or lay, without any discrimination, then why did he keep his monk's robes and kesa? The reason for doing so is to be found in the doctrine of the 3 Dharma ages and the lamp for the last Dharma age, Mappo Tomio Ki, by Master Saicho. Both Shinran and his master Honen made reference to this work, and Shinran even quoted it almost entirely in chapter 6 of his Kagyo Shinsho. This is how important it was for him and why we, his present-day disciples, who also wear the monk robes and get married, must understand it thoroughly. Here is how Master Saicho explained the doctrine of the 3 Dharma ages. Quote, with regard to the Dharma, there are 3 ages, and among people there are 3 levels. The instruction imparting the teaching and precepts flourishes and declines according to the age, and words of condemnation or praise are accepted or rejected depending on the person. The fortunes of the 3 ancient eras arose and declined in different ways, and the wisdom and enlightenment of beings of the 500-year periods after the Buddha's demise differ. How can beings be saved by only one path? How can they be disciplined according to one principle? End quote. Generally speaking, the doctrine of the 3 Dharma ages refers to the gradual decline of the capacities of beings to practice the Dharma and attain realization through it. Thus, there is a difference between the time when Shakyamuni Buddha was in human body and influenced directly through his example and his holy presence those gathered around him, and the periods far away in time when only the teaching remains, but not the teacher. According to Saicho and the passages he quoted, the first period of 500 years after the Buddha's departure from his physical body, that is, parinirvana, is called the right Dharma age. The second Dharma age is called the semblance or imitative Dharma age, and it lasted 100 years after the previous one. The third and last Dharma age lasts for 10,000 years after the second age. Master Saicho quoted the Sutra of Mahamaya, where it is stated, quote, during the first 500 years after the Buddha's parinirvana, 7 holy monks, sages all, including Maha Kasyapa, will uphold the right Dharma in succession, so that it does not perish. After 500 years, the right Dharma will become completely extinct. 600 years after, the 95 kinds of non-Buddhist teachings will arise and vie with each other, but Ashwagosha will appear and subdue them all. 700 years after, Nagarjuna will appear and demolish the banners of wrong views. 800 years after, monks will give themselves to self-indulgence, and only a few will attain the fruit of enlightenment. 900 years after, menials will be made into monks and nuns. 1,000 years after, on hearing of the contemplation of bodily impurity, they will be enraged and give it no thought. 1,100 years after, monks and nuns will take wives and husbands, and will break and revile the precepts. 1,200 years after, monks and nuns will have children. 1,300 years after, the yellow monks' robes will be changed to white. 1,400 years after, the 4 kinds of disciples will all be like hunters, and will sell the offerings made to the 3 treasures. Here I declare, 1,500 years after, 2 monks in the land of Kosambi will fall into dispute with each other, and finally kill each other. As a result, the teachings will be stored in the Naga's palace. End quote. Words like the right Dharma will become completely extinct, or the teachings will be stored in the Naga's palace, means that although one can still find the written text of the Buddha's teaching, the practices based on personal power are as good as non-existent or practically non-existent, because nobody can attain enlightenment through them. The requirements of the path of self-power within the Buddhist teachings do not accord any more with the capacities of beings. This is what started to happen in the semblance Dharma Age, and it is a constant reality in the last Dharma Age. We have to bear in mind that the expression, the right Dharma, in the above text refers to the Dharma methods based on self-power, the path of sages, taught in the right Dharma Age, as there is also a right Dharma, or most suitable Dharma method, for the last Dharma Age. This is the Amida Dharma, that is the primal vow of Amida Buddha and all teachings that are in agreement with the primal vow. I'm saying this because in the primal vow there is also a warning against slandering the right Dharma, which means to deny the existence of Amida and his pure land, as well as the efficacy of his primal vow. So, if the observance of precepts and various self-power practices leading to enlightenment in this very life were the right Dharma for the right Dharma Age, the primal vow and Amida Dharma is the right Dharma for the last Dharma Age, when people cannot attain enlightenment through their own powers, and the primal vow alone remains the only path that affords passage for all beings, no matter how meager their spiritual capacities are. Thus, there must always be a correspondence between the practices and the capacities of beings, as well as the time in which they live. The primal vow is actually the right Dharma for all ages, because beings of any time can be saved through it. But, for the sake of our present discussion, we will focus on the specifics of each of the Dharma ages. How can beings be saved by only one path? Said Master Saicho. And we say, how can beings of the last Dharma age attain enlightenment through the means and practices given to those living in the presence of the historical Buddha or his direct successors, the right Dharma age? It is like rubbing green wood to build a fire. Fire cannot be made, for time is not right, said Master Tao Chao, in an appropriate comparison. Also, Master Shinran said it very clearly, quote, truly we know that the teaching of the path of sages were intended for the period when the Buddha was in the world, and for the right Dharma age. They are altogether inappropriate for the times and beings of the semblance and last Dharma ages, and the age when the Dharma has become extinct. Already their time has passed. They are no longer in accord with beings. End quote. Thus, the Great Collection Sutra states, quote, out of billions of sentient beings who seek to perform practices and cultivate the way in the last Dharma age, not one will gain realization. End quote. Master Tao Chao said, quote, this is now the last Dharma age. It is the evil world of the 5 defilements. This one gate, the Pure Land way, it is the only path that affords passage. Thus, the multitudes of this evil defiled world ignorant of the distinctive characteristics of the latter age, revile the behavior and attitudes of monks and nuns, but all people of the present, whether monk or lay, must take measure of their own capabilities." End quote. To judge and revile the monks and nuns of the last Dharma age on the basis of the principles and capacities of the right Dharma age is a grave mistake, and arguing against this very idea is why Master Saicho wrote Lamp for the Last Dharma Age. So let us go back to this text. After he presented the above passage from the Sutra of Mahayama, Saicho said, words in brackets, are my own. Quote, "This passage is also found in the Nirvana Sutra, fascicle 18, the Benevolent King's Sutra, and others. According to these sutra passages, after 1,500 years, there will be no precepts, meditation, or wisdom. Therefore, the Great Collection Sutra, fascicle 51, states, during the first 500 years after my nirvana, monks and others will be resolute in attaining emancipation through the right Dharma that I have taught, through the self-power methods. In the next 500 years, they will be resolute in meditation. In the next 500 years, they will be resolute in listening to the teaching. In the next 500 years, they will be resolute in constructing temples. In the last 500 years, they will be resolute in conflict and disputes. And the pure Dharma, that is, the Dharma methods based on purity of meditation, wisdom, and precepts, will sink into dormancy." This passage means that during the first 3 500-year periods, the 3 dharmas of precepts, meditation, and wisdom will in succession be resolutely upheld. This corresponds to the 2 periods in the quotation above. The right dharma lasting 500 years and the semblance dharma lasting 1,000 years. The period from that of temple construction on is the last Dharma age. Thus, Chi's commentary on the Diamond Sutra states, the right Dharma age lasts 500 years, and the semblance Dharma age 1,000. After these 1,500 years, the right Dharma will perish utterly. We know, therefore, that the period from temple construction on belongs to the last Dharma age. End quote. After some calculations based on various historical sources of the time, Master Saicho concludes that his time, he lived between 767 to 822 CE, belongs to the end of the semblance Dharma age. Conduct in this period is already the same as in the last Dharma age. Then he explained, words in brackets are my own. Quote, in the last Dharma age only the verbal teaching remains. There is no practice or realization. If there were precepts, then there would be the breaking of precepts. But already there are no precepts. By the violation of what precept can the precept said to be broken? And since there is not even the breaking of precepts, how much less is there the observance of precepts? Therefore the Great Collection Sutra states, after the Buddha's nirvana, those without precepts will gradually fill the land. End quote. By saying that only the verbal teaching remains, he didn't mean that in the last Dharma age there will be no written text, as we can clearly see that our world is filled with sutras translations easily available online or in printed form, but to the fact that the Dharma will remain an empty talk, as nobody will be able to put self-power teachings into practice. Next, what is this idea that there are no precepts? Well, it refers to the fact that although we can read about the precepts, they are no longer useful because of our low capacities to help us attain enlightenment. Talking about precepts to low-level people like us, monks or lay, living in this last Dharma age is like asking terminally ill patients on the deathbed to practice sports, or like asking madmen to act sanely and responsibly and reasonably. Just like there are no physical requirements for terminally ill patients, there are no moral precepts for monks or lay of our age, in the same way that the sports exist for healthy individuals, but it does not exist for terminally ill patients. Moral precepts exist for spiritually evolved people who can really follow them, while they do not practically exist for wretched beings like ourselves. Also, just like reasonable actions can be expected from sane people, one cannot demand madmen to act sanely, or monks of the last Dharma age to behave like monks of the right Dharma age, when Shakyamuni or his direct disciples were present. This, of course, does not mean that we should not try to have a good behavior in our daily life, but it indicates that no matter the amount of success, we cannot be judged according to the standards of the right Dharma age. Master Saicho wrote, Quote, in the last Dharma age, with which we are concerned here, there are monks in name only. These nominal monks are the true treasures of the age. Are they not fields of merit? If, in the last Dharma age, there were those who observed precepts, they would seem strange and suspect, like a tiger in the marketplace. Who would believe in such things? End quote. Those who seem to be successful in perfectly observing the moral precepts are not actually ordinary monks and nuns, but great bodhisattvas who manifest in this world to maintain an example and uphold the Dharma, so that Buddhist disciples, especially those who are not open towards Amida's primal vow, be kept on the path. Master Saicho quoted the Nirvana Sutra. Quote, in the last Dharma age, a multitude of 120,000 great bodhisattvas uphold the Dharma, so that it does not perish. End quote. Then he explained, quote, since this statement concerns bodhisattvas of high rank, it is irrelevant for our discussion here. End quote. This is why our main concern are the decadent monks and nuns of the last Dharma age who cannot keep the moral precepts, and not the exceptions that are actually bodhisattva manifestations. Master Saicho wrote, quote, question, we have already seen the subject of monks' conduct in the right, semblance, and last Dharma ages discussed in many sutras. Is it stated in the sacred scriptures, however, that nominal monks of the last Dharma age are the true treasure? Answer. The Great Collection Sutra, Fascicle 9 states, it is like genuine gold being regarded as a priceless treasure. If there were no genuine gold, silver would be regarded as a priceless treasure. If there were no silver, then brass, as spurious treasure, would be regarded as priceless. If there were no brass, then copper or nickel, iron, pewter or lead would be regarded as priceless. All such metals are the world's treasures, but it is the Buddha Dharma that is priceless. If there were no treasure of Buddha, the Pratyeka Buddhas are supreme. If there are no Pratyeka Buddhas, the Arhat is supreme. If there is no Arhat, other sages are regarded as supreme. If there are no other sages, beings who have realized meditation are regarded as supreme. If there are no beings who have realized meditation, those who strictly observe precepts are regarded as supreme. If there are none who strictly observe precepts, monks who imperfectly observe precepts are regarded as supreme. If there are none who imperfectly observe precepts, monks in name only, who shave their heads and wear a monk's robes, are regarded as supreme. Compared with followers of the 95 kinds of wrong paths, that is non-Buddhist, they are regarded as belonging to the first rank. They are worthy of receiving the world's homage. They are the field of merits for beings. Why? Because they show that they are held to be in awe by sentient beings. If one pays homage to such monks, protecting and supporting them, before long one will surely attain the state of discernment. In this passage, 8 kinds of priceless treasures are mentioned: the Tathagata, Pratyeka Buddhas, Shravakas, and those of the first 3 fruits, beings who have realized meditation, monks who observe precepts, and monks who break precepts, and monks in name only, who are without precepts. These are the priceless treasures of the right, semblance, and last Dharma ages, respectively. The first 4 belong to the right Dharma age, the next 3 to the semblance Dharma age, and the last to the last Dharma age. Thus, we know clearly that those who break precepts and those who have no precepts are all true treasures. End quote. As we have seen above, each Dharma age has its own spiritual treasures, or monks and nuns, who act as teachers for sentient beings of that specific age. These should be judged only in accordance with the spiritual capacities of their times, and should be respected and cared for by their contemporaries. In comparison with the monks of the right Dharma age, who are like pure gold, monks and nuns in the last Dharma age are like lead. But for people who do not have access to gold, lead is the greatest treasure. Here is another passage from the precious work of Master Saicho, discussing why the monks of the last Dharma age should not be judged in accordance with the standard of those living in the right Dharma age. The following also shows that some sutra passages who blame monks who break precepts and those supporting them apply to the right Dharma age and not to the monks and their supporters of the semblance and last Dharma age. Words in brackets are my own. Quote, question, humbling reading the preceding passage from the sutra, I see that monks who break precepts and monks in name only are indeed all true treasures. Why is it stated in the Nirvana Sutra and the Great Collection Sutra, if the king and the ministers make offerings to monks who break precepts, the three calamities will arise in the land, and they will eventually be born in hell? It is so even with monks who break precepts. How much more so, then, with the monks who have no precepts? Thus, with regard to a single person, the monk who breaks precepts, the Tathagata speaks at times with censure and at times with praise. Is there not the fault of two contradictory judgments in the exposition of the one sage? Answer: your reasoning is in error. In the Nirvana Sutra and the other sutras, there is an injunction against breaking precepts in the right Dharma age. This is not spoken with regard to monks of the semblance and last Dharma ages. Although the terms are the same, the times differ. There is injunction or sanction according to the age. This is the great sage's intent. In the world-honored one, there is no fault of two contradictory judgments. If that is the case, how do we know that the Nirvana Sutra and the other sutras prohibit breaking precepts during the right Dharma age, and that this does not apply to monks of the semblance and last Dharma ages? Answer: it is revealed in terms of the 8 kinds of true treasure taught in the passage from the Great Collection Sutra quoted before. This is the proof, for depending on the age, all are regarded as priceless. However, the monk who breaks precepts in the time of the right Dharma defiles the purity of the Sangha. Hence the Buddha strictly prohibits this and does not allow him to enter. Thus it is stated in the Nirvana Sutra, fascicle 3, the Tathagata has now entrusted the supreme right Dharma, the Dharma of the right Dharma age, to kings, ministers, counselors, monks and nuns. If there are some who break their precepts and slander the right Dharma, the kings, ministers and 4 groups of Buddhists should earnestly correct them. Such kings, ministers and others will gain immeasurable merit. They are my disciples. They are true hearers. They will attain merit beyond measure. Such words of injunction appear in numerous places throughout the sutras. All are injunctions explained for the right Dharma age, not teachings for the semblance and last Dharma ages. This is known because there is no Dharma that can be abused. For the right Dharma, the self-power practices of the right Dharma age cannot be practiced in the latter part of the semblance Dharma age and in the last Dharma age. What is there that can be called abuse of the Dharma? There are no precepts to be broken. Who is there that can be called one who breaks precepts? Further, in such times there is no practice of right Dharma for a great king to safeguard. How should the 3 calamities be fomented? And how could the practice of precepts and wisdom be lost? Moreover, in the semblance and last Dharma ages, there is no one who attains the fruit of realization. Why should it be taught that the great king be advised by the 2 kinds of sages? Hence we know that the teachings in the preceding passages all refer to the right Dharma age, when precepts are observed, for only then can there be breaking of precepts. End quote. The capacities of monks and nuns as well as lay people to observe precepts gradually becomes lower and lower as time passes in the semblance Dharma age. Quote, concerning the 1,000 years of the semblance Dharma age, during the first 500 years, the observance of precepts wanes by degrees, and the breaking of precepts gradually spreads. Although precepts are observed and practices performed, there is no realization. At that time, monks will gradually come to desire and keep the 8 kinds of impure possessions. End quote. According to the Nirvana Sutra, the justification for such changes in the behavior of monks will be influenced by Mara, who will gradually gain strength and spread false views, such as Buddha allows monks and nuns, quote, to acquire and keep menials, servants, cows, sheep, elephants, horses, and so on, including copper and iron kettles and cauldrons, copper bowls of various sizes, and necessities of daily life. They may cultivate fields and plant seeds, buy and sell, engage in trade, and store grains and rice. End quote. There is a great difference between pitying sentient beings, saving them as they are, as Amida does, not judging them, etc., and allowing them to make wrong deeds. Buddhas never taught that breaking precepts is good, nor did they agree with the degradation of monks and nuns, but it was a thing that could not be prevented in any way, as they could not be forced by the enlightened ones to have the same pure behavior as the monks and nuns of the right Dharma age. Quote, next, said Master Saicho, in the latter half of the semblance Dharma age, observance of precepts will decline and diminish, and breaking precepts will increase enormously. End quote. However, those monks who break precepts Although spiritually dead, they were like the usefulness of the musk after the musk deer has died. Quote, the Sutra of the 10-Wheeled states, if there is a person who, according to my teaching, abandons home life and yet commits evil, then though he is not a shramana, he calls himself a shramana. And though he does no pure acts, he calls himself one who performs pure acts. Such a monk opens the storehouse of all good acts and virtues to all the devas, nagas, and yakshas, thus becoming a true teacher of sentient beings. Though he cannot be said to know content with but few desires, he shaves his head and beard and dons monk's robes. Through this he increases the roots of good of sentient beings and discloses the path of good for the beings of the heavens. Although the monk who breaks precepts is said to be a dead man, the traces of the power of precepts in him are like the cow's liver. The cow may have died, but people can, in full awareness, derive the medicinal liver from it. It is like the youthfulness of the musk after the musk deer has died. End quote. Master Saisho commented, quote, as we see it is stated in the Nirvana Sutra, in the poisonous Kara forest there is a single persimmon tree. There is a parable teaching that the momentum of the semblance Dharma age is declining, and that in the defiled world characterized by the breaking of precepts, there are but one or two monks who observe precepts. Further, it is stated, although the monk who breaks precepts is said to be a dead man, it is like the usefulness of the musk after the musk deer has died. He becomes the true teacher of sentient beings. You should know clearly that this statement, that at these times monks who break the precepts are gradually tolerated and become the fields of merit of the people of the world, is identical to the statement of the Great Collection Sutra above. End quote. Master Saicho further said, quote, next, after the end of the semblance Dharma age, there are no precepts whatsoever. Recognizing the momentum of the times, the Buddha praises those who are monks in name only, declaring them to be the field of merits for the world, in order to save the people of the last Dharma age. The Great Collection Sutra, fascicle 52 states, if in the last age that follows, there is a monk in name only, who in accord with my teaching shaves his hair and beard and wears a monk robe, and if there are lay supporters making offerings to him, these latter will acquire immeasurable merit. Further, the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish states, if in the future, in the last age when the Dharma vehicle is about to perish, nominal monks should take wives and have them bear children, still lay supporters should pay homage to groups of 4 or more monks, just as they would to Shariputra, Mahama Magliana, and the others. End quote. Also, it is stated in the Great Collection Sutra, quote, the crime of striking and reproaching a monk who wears a robe but breaks or does not keep the precepts is the same as causing 1 trillion Buddhas to shed blood. If, because of the Dharma that I teach, sentient beings shave their hair and beard and don monks' robes, though they may not observe the precepts, they all bear the seal of nirvana already. Those people indicate the way to nirvana to various people and heavenly beings. These people are already within the 3 treasures, have given rise to faith and respect in their minds, and surpass the 95 kinds of non-Buddhist path. These people will invariably enter nirvana quickly. They excel all laymen and secular people, with the exception of the householders who have attained endurance. For this reason, heavenly beings and humans should venerate them, even if they break the precepts. End quote. The passage is so clear and wonderful that I do not think it needs any further explanations, except this sentence, quote, they excel all laymen and secular people, with the exception of the householders who have attained endurance. End quote. Endurance or perseverance, shanti, is part of the 6 paramitas or perfections that I already explained in the Jodo Shinshu context in my recent book. Simply stated, one who entrusts to Amida Buddha has natural perseverance in the sense that he will never be interrupted in his faith. Anyone, whether monk or lay, can have this, as faith in Amida appears in the hearts of all beings, no matter if they are ordained or not. The monks, nuns, as well as laymen and laywomen of the last Dharma age will all enter nirvana at the end of their present life. This is what is meant by enter nirvana quickly in the above passage, if they entrust to Amida Buddha and say his name in faith. However, those monks and nuns of the last Dharma age that do not have faith in Amida but continue to engage in miscellaneous practices in the present, will be reborn in the times of future Buddhas like Maitreya and enter nirvana through their guidance. Quote, the Sutra of Great Compassion states, the Buddha said to Ananda, in the future age, when the Dharma is about to fall into complete extinction, monks and nuns who have abandoned home life in accord with the Dharma that I teach will wander together from one wine house to another, leading their children by the hand. While following the Dharma, they will commit impure acts. Ananda, while following the Dharma, people will perform the acts of Shramanas, merely inform and declare themselves Shramanas. In appearance, they will resemble Shramanas, and they will still wear monks' robes. In the auspicious Kalpa, when the Buddhas from Maitreya down to Rukkhana Tathagata appear, such Shramanas will, under those Buddhas, gradually enter Nirvana in the realm of Nirvana, without residue. None will be left behind. Why? Because among the Shramanas under the guidance of the Tathagatas, those who say the Buddha's name even once, awakening one moment of trust, will gain virtue through their act that will ultimately not be in vain. Thus, through the Buddha wisdom, I discern the Dharma realm. End quote. The above fragment, and especially the words, quote, those who say the Buddha's name even once, awakening one moment of trust, end quote, are a clear indication that those nominal monks and nuns of the last Dharma age who do not entrust to Amida's primal vow and do not say his name and faith now will surely do it in the time of Maitreya and the future Buddhas. Master Saicho said, quote, all those sutras referring to the age speak of the nominal monks of the last Dharma age in the future as the venerable teachers of that period. If the monks of the last Dharma age are constrained by the injunctions meant for the right Dharma age, then the teachings and capacities of beings will fall into opposition, and human beings and Dharma will not be suited to each other. Accordingly, the four-part Vinaya states, when that which has not been prohibited is made into a prohibition, the Buddha's three illuminations are sundered. Codifying such arbitrary opinions is an offense. With the quotations from the sutras given above, the alignment of Dharma ages and beings has been completed. End quote. In conclusion, whenever we speak about ordained clergy in our Jodo Shinshu school or in other Japanese or non-Japanese Buddhist schools, we should remember that we refer to nominal monks and nuns of the last Dharma age, and we should never judge them according to the standards of the monks and nuns of the right Dharma age. All that was written by Master Saicho in his lamp for the last Dharma age was based on the words of Shakyamuni Buddha himself in the Mahayana Sutras, and approved by Honen Shonen and Shinran Shonen, who quoted almost the entire text in his Kagyo Shinsho. Thus, if anybody asks us, ordained clergy of the Jodo Shinshu Amidaji, who are we, or who we are, we should humbly say that we are monks and nuns of the last Dharma age. We are not virtuous monks like Shariputra, Ananda, and others who lived during the right Dharma age, but monks in name only, that is, monks who shave their heads and wear the robes and kesa of Nembutsu faith. We do read about the moral precepts, and we try our best to have a decent moral life, but this trying can no longer be called observance of precepts, and our failure in the moral life cannot be called breaking of precepts, as we are too spiritually sick to be even given such precepts. For us, the precepts are practically non-existent, not because we deny them, but because we cannot follow them or use them as a means to attain enlightenment. The only path we can follow is the Nembutsu of faith in Amida Buddha, and even that does not depend on our limited capacities. Our lives as monks and nuns are dedicated to the single goal of helping all beings entrust to Amida Buddha. We are focused on this day and night, although some of us also have wives and children. This is why we are not lay people, and although we are in the worldly life, we do not belong to it, as our aspiration is otherworldly. Question: what is the difference between priests and monks? Answer: the word priest does not exist in the classical Buddhist vocabulary, being a modern adaptation to explain the idea of married monks and nuns to people whom such a thing would be hard to understand due to their cultural background. For example, in Romania, Russia, or other countries in the southeast of Europe and the Balkans, it might be difficult to use the word monk because people here, the Orthodox Christian majority, are used to thinking that monks live in monasteries and only priests get married. On the contrary, in some countries with a Catholic majority, people might also not understand the idea of a priest, as in their case, priests too are celibate. Recently, a Dharma friend from Brazil told me the following, quote, priest or padre and nun, frere, are exclusive for Catholics. Monk, monge for male, monja for female are used for Buddhist clergy. It is the same reason why in English you have to use pastor instead of priest for Protestants. There is no such thing in Portuguese as a Buddhist priest, only a Buddhist monk, monge or monja, no matter if married or not. End quote. So Josho Shinshu clergy of Amidaji can rightfully call themselves monks and nuns based on the teachings presented in this article, which were approved by many masters of the past and the words of Shakyamuni Buddha himself. Only if you think that some people might not understand what you say and you do not have time to explain in detail, you can use the word priest. I myself often used the word priest in the past, but I will also start to refer myself more as a monk of the Last Dharma Age, because this is what I really am. Namo Amida Bu. There are 16 important footnotes to the chapter or section entitled Monks and Nuns of the Last Dharma Age. Footnote 5 on page 7 states, during that time, monk ordination could be given with imperial permission and be taken away by imperial decree. However, this was an abnormal thing, and Shinran, as well as Honen, continued to wear his robes, which shows that he didn't really agree that the emperor, whom he also criticized for his decision, had the right to do such a thing. There were also many monks during that era who did not care to be officially recognized by the authorities and who roamed the countryside and did various practices. Footnote 6 on page 8 states, Buddhist clergy, except Josho Shinshu, were not allowed to marry by law until 1872, and nowadays most of the monks in Japan from all schools are married and transfer their temples from father to son. Footnote 7 on page 9 states, Master Saicho, or Dengyo Daishi, who lived between 767 to 822 CE, was the founder of the Tendai school of Buddhism in Japan. Footnote 11 on page 12 states, the slander of the right Dharma mentioned in the primal vow also includes to deny the existence of other Buddhas and the authenticity of the Mahayana Sutras. See my detailed explanations of the primal vow in my book, Commentary on the Sutra on the Buddha of Infinite Life. Footnote 13 on page 14 states, the age when the Dharma will become extinct refers to the time after the last Dharma age, when lifespan will decrease to 10 years due to constant war, famine, and plagues. Even during that time, the Nembutsu of faith will be effective in bringing one to liberation. After the age when the Dharma becomes extinct comes to an end, people will start to slowly wake up and change their ways until a new good time will appear, and Maitreya will come into this world as a successor to Shakyamuni. Footnote 16 on page 14 states, the 5 defilements are the 5 marks of decay of the world we live in. 1. The defilement of views, when incorrect, perverse thoughts and ideas are predominating. 2. The defilement of passions, when all kinds of transgressions are exalted. 3. The defilement of human condition, when people are usually dissatisfied and unhappy. 4. The defilement of lifespan, when the human lifespan as a whole decreases, according to the sutras, when it is less or close to 100 years. 5. The defilement of the world age, when war and natural disasters are rife. Footnote 18 on page 15 states, Master Saicho explained, quote, the first stage of sagehood that is attained is termed emancipation, end quote. Footnote 22 on page 19. According to Mahayana Buddhism, there are 2 types of bodhisattvas. 1. Bodhisattvas, an aspiration who have made the vows of becoming Buddhas for themselves and all beings, but are still on the path, still in training, and are still unenlightened, that is, not Buddhas yet. Anyone who made the 4 bodhisattva vows may call himself or herself a bodhisattva in aspiration. Some bodhisattvas may be very much advanced and on various higher levels, even close to enlightenment, but as long as they have not reached perfect enlightenment, I also include them in this category. 2. Bodhisattvas who already attained Buddhahood, but who do not remain secluded in their enlightenment. These are in fact ancient Buddhas who manifest as bodhisattvas. In this category we find Avalokiteshvara, Mahasamadhi-prapta, Samantabhadra, Manjushri, Maitreya, and many others. Among those bodhisattvas who manifest in the last Dharma age, some might be in the high levels of the first category, while others in the second. For more detailed explanation of the bodhisattvas in the second category, please read section 2, The Qualities of Bodhisattvas in the Audience, from my book, Commentary on the Sutra on the Buddha of Infinite Life. Footnote 25 on page 20 states, a Pratyeka Buddha, or solitary realizer, is one who keeps his master's identity secret and prefers to stay in solitary places. It is said that, quote, fear at the thought of samsara, yearning for nirvana, little compassion, arrogance, secretive about their teachers, and enjoying solitude, a wise one should understand that these are the marks of the solitary realizer family. End quote. The Shravaka or Shravaka vehicle, or in Pratyeka Buddha yana, are the 2 vehicles or yanas of the Hinayana, while the Bodhisattva yana is the Mahayana, which aims at attaining nirvana for all beings. Footnote 26 on page 21 states, and Arhat is the saint and the culmination of the Hinayana Buddhist teaching. He has overcome the outward manifestation of the afflictive emotions, but has not completely uprooted his psychic imprint. He is free from samsara, but has not attained perfect enlightenment. For this reason we say he did not discover the Buddha nature. Footnote 27 on pages 21 and 22 states, a Hinayana Shravaka or Hinayana hearer is the Buddhist disciple who fears samsara and wishes to achieve nirvana, but has little compassion. It is said, one who is afraid upon seeing the suffering of samsara and yearns to achieve nirvana, but has little interest in benefiting sentient beings. These are the 3 marks of the hearer family. End quote. These should not be confused with the Shravakas mentioned in the larger sutra, which refers to people who might have been Hinayana Shravakas in a previous existence before being born in the Pure Land, and who are now faithful enlightened disciples of Amida, Buddha, and hear the teaching directly from him. Footnote 33 on page 27 states, it was said by some doctors of those times that cow's liver contains medicine, which is why the Buddha used this metaphor. Footnote 35 on page 28 states, this fragment of the lamp for the last Dharma age appears in the collected works of Shinran, Shin Buddhism Translation Series, Jodo Shinshu Hongwanji, Kyoto 1997, page 252, while the rest is from a different translation. Footnote 36 on page 28 states, this fragment of the lamp for the last Dharma age appears in the translation done by BDK, The Candle of the Latter Dharma, Mappo Tomio Ki by Saicho, BDK English Tripitaka, volume 107-3, translated from the Japanese by Robert Rhodes, the Martyrs Center for Buddhist Translation and Research, 1994. I use this variant because the expression, quote, at these times monks who break the precepts are gradually tolerated and become the fields of merit of the people of the world, end quote. In BDK edition sounds better than, quote, in this period the breaking of precepts gradually comes to be permitted and becomes the field of merits for the world, end quote, as in the Hongwanji edition. Footnote 38 on page 30. This fragment is a combination of the translation done by Hongwanji and the collected works of Shinran, Shin Buddhism Translation Series, Shinshu Hongwanji-ka, Kyoto 1997, page 251, and the translation done by BDK and the BDK English Chipitaka, Volume 107, 3. Faith, or Shinjin, once received, cannot be lost. Footnote 43 on page 33 states, we should bow to all monks and nuns of the last Dharma age, and treat them like Shariputra and Ananda, except those who deny the existence of Amida Buddha and his Pure Land, or the authenticity of the Mahayana Sutras.